I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Marketing Podcast, your source for all things marketing. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres to keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, book signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today is a very special episode. So today I have back on a return guest, Curt Cuscino, who has also just released a new book with us, and it is Money Matters, Business Leaders Volume 3. And Curt is also the founder and CEO over at Hype Life Brands. So we got a whole lot to talk about. But first, Curt, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Oh, man. So I'm happy to have you here, number one. Number two, was an honor to publish you in this book. And I was talking with our managing editor, Jessica, and I was like, we're reading over your writing, and I'm like, man, this guy Curt just has so much style in his writing. I had a little bit of writer envy on you there, Curt. So, I mean, you did an amazing job. So thank you again for your contribution.
Thank you. Praying hands emoji.
So, absolutely. First off, we're going to spend this episode, we're going to get into the book, what your contribution, so leaders, born, not bred. But before we do that, I don't want to assume that all of our new listeners caught your first episode. So, let's start off with what you're doing over at Hype Life Brands. Tell us a little bit more about your company, please.
For sure. I founded Hype Life Brands back in 2001, and what we do is we are a progressive brand development and marketing agency that specializes in working with B2C lifestyle brands and startups, and those who are targeting the millennial generation primarily, of course, not exclusively. So we have a lot of deep specialization in the area of millennials and understanding how they engage in the current modern era as the bulk of the modern digital consumer. So we deal a lot with that with our clients who are either B2C or D2C, either lifestyle brands that are already at market. Our oldest, biggest client is about 17 years old and does about 7 figures in annual revenue. And our newest startup client has not gone to market yet, but we will be launching very soon here. And so we're pre-revenue, pre-traction, pre-everything, which is what we really love to do. So in working with visionary founders and entrepreneurs across the U.S.
No, that's awesome. And at the end, I'm definitely going to give you an opportunity to leave your info so that all our listeners can follow up that want to learn more about Hype Life Brands. But first, let's get into the book. So first, to all the listeners, you may have heard one of our book episodes in the past, and we're not going to give you all of it because we do want you to go out there and buy the book, but we're going to make sure to give you a nice teaser and flavor of what the book is about. So let's just start off with your chapter, Curt. So leaders, born or bred? Let's just kick it off with, so is leadership born? And that's one of the titles in your chapter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's a big question, and it's something that in our work with startups, we're always working with alongside a founder or an entrepreneur who's typically a subject matter expert in their area, and they have such a big vision that they're willing to jump out and, take this adventure in building a new venture, as I like to say. So one of the things that over the last 19 years, I've been able to observe and just work alongside CEOs and VPs of established companies as well as startups, you definitely start to see who truly is, a leader and who is sort of in a position through rank and seniority and promotions and whatever. And so I've had a lot of time to just observe while we're doing our work and helping our clients, just kind of see what leadership really looks like. And it, in a weird way, I suppose it helps, it kind of reflects back to me and shows me ways that we and I can improve in leading our clients and our engagements with our clients. So is it born? I would be giving away the whole chapter if I answer that.
We're not doing that. We're not doing that. You already gave it right there, and that's what I needed. So let's move on to Dragon Gap, because I didn't know this concept until I read your chapter. So tell us a little bit more about the Dragon Gap.
Yeah, it's not something I came up with, but as I mentioned in the book here, it actually from an author, Marty Neumeier, and he wrote a book. He's got a few great books. One of them that we highly recommend is the book Zag, and actually Dragon Gap is in a different book. But basically, the Dragon Gap in a nutshell is this gap of that a true leader has to cross in their own mind. And it's kind of this gap between what we know as today and what is referred to in this cool little diagram, basically what vision is, and crossing that dragon gap. Crossing that gap on the other side is what could be. And when we're working with B2C, D2C lifestyle startups, the entrepreneur that is taking on an intense commitment, both with capital as well as for the next several years of building a startup literally from the ground up, which, that's what we do. When we're building that from the ground up, that's a huge gap to be able to go from today, I'm going to invest, this capital into building this idea and bring it to life and bring it to market, and what it could be and how could this change the world. We like to say that, we work with these people who are such visionaries that they want to change something about our world. Steve Jobs was a great example. We didn't work with Steve Jobs, but he did something, that wasn't designed just to raise Apple's stock price in creating something like the iPod, but to really change the way that we consume music, which is, no matter what the times are, is transcendent of all, and to change the way that we could do that with both technology and lifestyle thinking and design is incredible. And so Steve Jobs, in his own way, in that moment, in those months or days or years or whatever that led up to that, he had to cross that gap and in his own mind. And then to your other question, lead people across that gap as well. Because there's always going to be these people that say, well, there's already X, Y, Z, or why would anybody do that? You hear famous stories of, the visionaries that created the drive-through at a bank. Like, people would say, no one's going to go sit in their car at a bank, That's crazy. And, you can go through the list of the many things that we take for granted today. But, that's the dragon gap in a nutshell, is crossing that gap from what is today to what could be in the future if the mission is engaged.
I love it. And so in your chapter, you go through different characteristics and talk about some things of what makes a leader. And one of the things that I learned, and it just kind of this light bulb went off in my head, and I've been kind of grappling with this for a couple of years. And I've learned that, as an entrepreneur, when I was in my financial advisory practice so many years ago, I understood this concept. But I think when I crossed over into the pain of entrepreneur land, your first point, ideas are a dime a dozen. Execution is everything. I mean, I want you to dive into this, but in my life, that was the thing that I'm probably just learning the last year and a half. Like, there's so few things that are proprietary or this or that or everything else that it's not the technology a lot of times. Other things, it's execution. So tell us a little bit more about your view on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, as the chapter, the subheading, ideas are a dime a dozen, execution is everything. At the end of the day, again, a characteristic that I've observed is there's lots and lots and lots of people with ideas out there, but the ones who are truly a leader, whether it is born or bred, and yes, you're going to have to read my chapter to get my end theory on this, but the leaders are the ones who really execute. They make sacrifices in order to execute. They move ahead, and part of it too is having, there's a timing factor and there's also an aim factor. So it's not to say that you should execute on every idea that comes into your head. It's just the same as an entrepreneur, but really choosing that right one, and then really surrounding yourself with a team, which is a purpose that we serve here at High Fly Brands. Surrounding yourself with a team that knows the terrain. You're basically saying, okay, I have this idea. I've done as much research as I know how to do. I feel like the timing is right. I've got capital to invest in making this, turning this idea into a startup or a business. Really, I have to remind people, startup is this like sexy term that flies around, but every new business is a startup. You are starting something up in order to make money and potentially, more importantly, connect with a bigger, deeper why and change something about the world for better. And in our world, we kind of require our clients to want to be able to do something where they're positively impacting, the millennial generation, as well as, we have other buying tribes that we're after, but something that's going to really positively impact the world, and particularly millennials. If it doesn't meet those criteria, then it's probably not something we're going to take on. So yeah, absolutely, like executing, getting past this sort of what if, and then insert negative scenario here. You got to move past that, and ultimately the ultimate concept that, for the leaders that we work with is it's obvious, it's clear to them. There is no other like, oh, I have these other 4 ideas too. It's just this, like, it's like a calling, really. This is like what I'm called to, and they execute on that, and they make that commitment, not for riches, not for future, in VC dollars or whatever it may be. That's their particular end game. It's just one of those things like, I have to do this.
So this was when I realized that you were way cooler and hip in writing than myself, is when I read this line here. So first off, number 3, real recognizes real. That goes without saying, but then when you defined it and when you translated it, I was dead. I would die. I'm going to read it verbatim. So it says, for those who perhaps didn't grow up listening to Nas, Jay-Z, and other profound wordsmiths with a keen sense of rhythm and cultural relevance, it translates to this. True leaders know when they're talking to another leader, and true leaders ask questions of those fellow leaders, lots of them. It's another big opportunity to learn, to absorb more knowledge. First off, I think that's the first time Nas and Jay-Z made it into one of our books, so thank you for that, for letting us publish that. But the second, the fact that you translated it, I died. And then you did it so well, I'm like, of course Curt could do this. So tell us more about real recognizing real, please.
I mean, I think it's something that I have observed and I wanted to mention it in the book in this chapter because there's sort of let's say an unspoken respect in the cream of the crop of the real true leaders, capital L, that we've worked alongside and with and guided. They're willing to listen, and they acknowledge, and they even though they are leaders in my book and my mind, they accept leadership as well. So the opposite of this would be someone who doesn't listen to outside input, doesn't like outside direction, doesn't like critique, doesn't like constructive criticism, like, hey, let's not go in this direction, let's go over in this direction. Here's why. That bothers them, because it becomes an ego. It's an ego issue. And, in my book, those are really not born leaders. That's something else. And so that's why I wanted to, highlight this area, in that real recognizes real respects real, and there's an understood, no one here is better than anyone else, but we're here to help, and you are a leader, and that's why we're working with you. And you believe that we are leaders, and that's why you're working with us, and that is a mutual hand-in-hand, bond sort of thing, and there's respect there. And that's really, in my book, the mark of a great leader is, again, someone who will listen and who will take leadership, who can say, I don't know everything, like I say, I'm happy to be wrong, because you know why? It means I learned something.
I'll tell you one thing. I loved it, and I listened, and when I read it, I was like, it hit home, and I'm just thinking about, my own personal journey in leadership and other people around me, and as we all, transition and grow in our careers and our businesses grow and all these things, and you see people evolve that you even knew, college buddies, whatever, like, and see everybody kind of grow together. It's just so interesting as that, and to go down that progression, and with you bringing up those, those icons, you took me back to those days when maybe I was a little bit less willing to listen. now I'm like, I hope I'm wrong. It's tiring to be right. I want you to be right so that I don't have to do this work. I want my team to be right all day long. You're right. Now go do it.
Absolutely. And that means, and if your team is right all day long, that means you did the right thing and you hired people who are smarter than you, which is the goal. You didn't set up an orphanage.
Amen. so Curt, that being said, I could talk to you all day about this stuff. But we're about out of time. If somebody's listening to this, and number one, if they want to learn more about Hype Life Brands and connect with you and your team, what's the best way for them to reach out?
They can visit our agency site at hypelifebrands.com. That's HYPELIFE brands.com. You can also find us on Twitter at Hype Life Brands and connect with me as well on Twitter at Curt, Cuscino is my last name. So Curt Cuscino. You can find me on Twitter there. So just connect, reach out. You can also email us directly at engage@hypelifebrands.com as well, or we've got a chat on our site, and you can pretty much hear from one of us just about any time of the day except for when we sleep here in Southern California.
Fantastic. Well, hey, Curt, been awesome having you back on the show, number one. And again, thank you for letting us publish your work. I mean, it was definitely an honor. Love the things that you brought to the table and to the book. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. Hope you had fun listening. We did have fun making this for you, as you could tell. If you did, don't forget, subscribe to the podcast. Leave me a review on the Apple iTunes. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Mission Matters Marketing, give us a subscribe there, and also leave some comments in the video section. Love to hear what kind of things you're working on and other projects. And don't forget, go out and grab that book. We're going to leave the link in the show notes so you can pick up a copy there. And Curt, thanks again for coming on the show. It was a pleasure.